nervous system. In autonomous nervous system, there are two branches of the sympathetic and parasympathetic. The classification is based on anatomical differences. What is the anatomical differences? In sympathetic nervous system, there is a shorter preganglionic neuron there. In parasympathetic nervous system, there is a longer preganglionic neuron is there. Now, again, in majority of sympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter is noradrenaline. Hence, they are known as adrenergic nervous system. Only exception is the sweat glands. It has got acetylcholine. Because the anatomy is similar, it is considered as sympathetic, not cholinergic. It has got a special name called sympathetic cholinergic. In case of parasympathetic nervous system, at postganglionic neuron, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, and the receptors are muscarine receptor. Because the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, they are called as cholinergic neurotransmission. They will be acting on muscarine receptors. Now, the origin, the preganglionic neuron originates in sympathetic system. It originates from thoracic and lumbar regions, hence it is known as Thoraco lumbar. In case of parasympathetic, it starts from cranium, from the top to the sacral region. It is known as cranial sacral. All the three names are synonyms. You say sympathetic nervous system, adrenergic nervous system, or thoracolumbar. All of them are same. You say parasympathetic nervous system, cholinergic nervous system, craniosacral system. All of them are same. These are all synonyms. You need to understand them, then everything will become clear upon. One more difference is that in case of preganglionic neurons. Now, another neuron Now, in sympathetic system, a neuron directly innervates adrenal gland. This is kidney, renal tissue. On the top, you have a gland known as adrenal gland. Now, when this neuron innervates this adrenal gland, when it stimulates, this releases adrenaline. See, from this adrenal gland, adrenaline is released. In fact, when you see proportionally, it is 80% adrenaline and 20% noradrenaline. So the stimulation of adrenal gland releases these chemicals into the blood. It releases 80% of adrenaline, 20% of noradrenaline into the blood. The released one will be acting on again alpha and beta receptors. You need to understand the difference. It has got only one neuron. A single neuron binds with this, releases this one. Again, here they are also considered as sympathetic because of this neurotransmitter. Again, there is a shorter and one single neuron is there. So in adrenergic system, you have multiple things are there. It is a diffuse system. The preganglionic to postganglionic ratio is 1:20. A single preganglionic neuron will goes to ganglion. From the ganglion, multiple neurons will innervate multiple organs. That is the reason why when sympathetic nervous system is activated, you will have multiple responses. Whereas parasympathetic, the response is limited to only one organ. Second thing, in sympathetic nervous system, there is a postganglionic neuron which is releasing acetylcholine and it innervates sweat gland. Still, because of anatomy, it is considered as sympathetic fragment. Next one, a single sympathetic neuron innervates this adrenal gland. Once it is stimulated, adrenaline, noradrenaline, both of them will get released. So this is the gross differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic system. Now, let us understand what happens after the release of neurotransmitter. See, all the internal organs, the homeostasis is maintained by sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. As I explained you already, most of the time, every organ has got dual innervation. Dual innervation means for all these visceral organs, for heart, liver, lungs, everywhere, you have both the neurons innervation is there. So in most of the cases, sympathetic system will activate that system. In case of heart, if sympathetic system stimulation is there, heartbeat increases, heart activity increases. Whereas the parasympathetic system decreases heart function, heart rate is decreased and everything. So there need to be a balance all the time. That homeostasis is brought about by this dual innervation. Now let us see the effects of this system. What happens when a particular system is activated? What will be the further effects of this system? We'll have a comparative study. Once you understand them, then everything will become clear. First, let us see about sympathetic system. Now see, sympathy, as I told you, the word originated because of emotions. Because the system is related to emotions, it is called as sympathetic system. Now, this system is commonly known as fight or flight. Fight or flight. Understand this word. See, if you understand the physiology, see, till now we have seen anatomical part, all these things. Now we are getting into physiology. If you understand this physiology, all the drugs, their therapeutic uses will become crystal clear. Pay attention. Sympathetic nervous system is known as fight or flight response. Fight, the ability to fight. Flight means not aeroplane, running away. Now understand the situation. Let's say you have confronted with a tiger. You have two options. Either you have to run away from the tiger or you have to fight with the tiger. Unless we are superheroes, we cannot fight with tiger. Usually we all run away. But the system which is activated in this response is sympathetic nervous system. If you want to fight or if you want to run away, the system which is activated is sympathetic nervous system. Now understand, I'll tell you a narrative story. Based on that, understand the responses. In most of our movies, whatever the heroes does during a fight scene, those responses are considered as sympathetic responses. Understand this thing. You know, I remember watching a movie from Prabhas. The movie name was Chhatrapati. You know, in that movie, whenever hero is about to fight, the camera is zoomed to certain organs of that hero. That is what is sympathetic responses. At the beginning of the fight, the camera is zoomed to his eyes. The pupil dilation is shown. That is sympathetic response. After that, his biceps are shown. Blood circulation to the biceps are increased. Sympathetic response. He'll be taking deep breaths. Sympathetic response. Now understand what is happening. Whenever you want to fight or flight, the body needs a lot of energy to run or to fight. What are the things are required? Pupil is dilated. Why pupil is dilated? In order to see everything clearly. When pupil is dilated, the visual acuity increases, you can see everything clearly. To make sure everything is visible, pupil will get dilated. Immediate response. First one. Second one, in order to fight or run, what is required? Your skeletal muscles need a lot of blood supply. With that, the muscles will be working properly. How the blood supply increases? When the blood vessel to the skeletal muscle is dilated, more amount of blood reaches there. So what happens? Blood vessels to the skeletal muscles are dilated. Blood supply to the skeletal muscle is increased. Why do we need blood supply? The major job of blood is to carry oxygen and nutrients. By using that oxygen and nutrients, the muscles will get ATP energy. With that ATP, muscle contraction occurs. Whether you can fight or you can run. So you need oxygen. Where do we get oxygen? We get oxygen from respiration. So in order to increase that respiration or oxygen quotient, bronchodilation occurs. One by one, pupil dilation first. Next, blood circulation to the muscles increases. Now, second one, blood need to have more amount of oxygen. What need to be there? Bronchodilation should be there. Next, more amount of blood should be pumped to the skeletal muscles. More amount of blood need to be pumped means heart needs to give more contraction. So what happens? Heart rate increases. So pupil dilation, blood circulation increases to muscle. Bronchodilation occurs. Heart rate increases. Next, do you need only oxygen or anything else is required? It is not only oxygen. You need nutrients. Why do we take food? To get the nutrients. The major fuel source is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates will be digested and finally we'll get a glucose. Glucose gets into glycolysis, gives pyruvate. Pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA gets into Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle and it releases FADH2, NADH2. This FADH2, NADH2 gets into mitochondria. In the mitochondria, electron transport occurs. Finally, oxygen takes that electron. In this process, ATP is released. So in order to get ATP, what do we need? We need fuel, we need oxygen. Oxygen gets from bronchodilation and increased respiration. Fuel, you need to have more amounts of glucose. So whatever the glucose is there in the blood will be utilized. If the glucose amount is not sufficient, body will immediately increase the levels of glucose by two processes. One, glycogenolysis. Glycogen lysis. When glycogen is broken down, glucose will get released. You know, glycogen is a polymer. Every polymer contains at least 1 lakh glucose single units. So when it is broken down, all the glucose will get released. So what happens in this process? Glucose is released. The process is called as glycogenolysis. Next one, gluconeogenesis. Glucose is generated from pyruvate and some other sources. So glucose is being generated and glycogen is broken down to release more glucose. What is the purpose? To increase the levels of glucose in the blood. What will happen with that? The glucose is utilized by muscles and you will do all this work. That is what happens in fight or flight. See, if you understand what is happening, you will get the physiology as such. The first response, pupil dilation. Second response, increased blood supply to skeletal muscle. Third response, heart rate should increase so that more blood pumped to skeletal muscle. Next one, bronchodilation to get more amount of oxygen. Oxygen is not enough. You need nutrients. So what happens? Glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis. All of them are sympathetic stimulation. You think about any movie, you know, the best example is that one. Whenever Prabhas used to fight, the background music will be there, dum 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 dum, and then the hero pupil dilates, his muscles dilate, he will be taking a lot of that. This is what happens. All these responses are nothing but sympathetic stimulation. Now see, sympathetic stimulation is also popularly known as E-responses. They are known as E-response. E-response means when you are doing exercise, when you have higher emotions, when you are in excitement, all these changes will happen. All the changes. So let me revise it. What are the changes? We'll start one by one. First one, pupil dilation. See, technically, pupil dilation is known as mydriasis. So the first response is mydriasis. Pupil dilation occurs. Next one, increased blood supply to skeletal muscle. Why? Because with the skeletal muscle, we do all the work, fight or flight. So increased blood supply to skeletal muscle. Next one, in order to increase blood supply, what has to be done? Heart rate should be increased. Next one, to increase oxygen, what has to be done? Bronchodilation. Bronchial should get dilated. Next one, nutrients. How do you get nutrients? By doing glycogenolysis and by gluconeogenesis. So these are all the major actions of sympathetic system. What happens physiologically is all these things will happen. And all these things will increase pumps of glucose in our blood. There is a lot of oxygen. With this, we'll be doing it. You know, when people do exercise, all these changes will happen. Because in order to do exercise, you need to have a lot of amount of blood supply to the muscle. In order to pump more amount of blood to the muscle, heart rate should be increased. Bronchial should get dilated. Inside, a lot of glucose has to be released. So all of them, at that point of time, our body increases the sympathetic stimulation. Now understand this diffuse relationship. See, what all things are happening? Pupil dilation is there. Blood vessel dilation is there. Heart contractions are increased. Bronchial tissues are dilating. In the liver, gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis are happening. 5 organs has to be active. This is the relationship. The reason why the sympathetic has got diffuse relationship, the moment body realizes there is a requirement for more energy and more oxygen, the signal is released. It will be acting on all these organs. On the heart, what is happening? Heart rate is increasing. Blood vessels are dilating. Liver is doing for gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis. Again, understand, when all these things are happening, heat is generated. You know, when you do exercise, what happens? Heat is generated. But body cannot afford to have higher temperatures. Body temperature has to be constant. In order to control the temperature, again a sweat gland is activated and sweat is released. What is the job of sweat? To control the body temperature. The moment sweat comes out, it takes out that heat and it evaporates. In that process, it is cooling down our body temperature. That is the purpose of sweat. That is the reason why during summer days we have a lot of sweat. The external temperature is increasing body temperature. To control the temperature, sweat comes out. Now see, this is what is happening. Every organ is getting affected. And the effect is this: mydriasis in pupil, increase the blood supply, blood vessel, increase the heart rate and heart, bronchodilation and lungs, glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis and liver. Sweat glands will release a lot of sweat to control the body temperature. All of them will get affected, and this is sympathetic stimulation. So whenever you think about adrenergic or sympathetic stimulation, think about this. What happens when you do exercise? What happens when you are in excited state? What happens when you are in higher emotional state? All these things will happen. You know, anger, anxiety is an emotion. During anger and emotion, what happens? The pupil dilates, heart rate increases, anxiety. Blood will be having a lot of glucose. Contractions will be there. All of them sympathetic stimulation. It is known as fight or flight response. Clear? So see, always think about the heroic situation. What all the changes are there in his body? Nothing but this one. Again, understand this thing. See, one neuron is giving to multiple post-ganglionic neurons because all the organs will get affected and you see all the responses. This is about sympathetic nervous system. The other one is parasympathetic. Parasympathetic. See, parasympathetic, as I told you, the response is one neuron to another.